Good evening. My name is Kwesi, Dr. Kwesi Aning. I'm the director of the Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Tonight on this show, I have two extremely distinguished guests. To my immediate left is Captain Ebenezer Budukumsin, security consultant. And to my far left, Emmanuel Bensa, ECOWAS policy analyst. Tonight, we want to talk about something fascinating that touches on everybody's life. We want to talk about emerging and contemporary security issues. But we want to take a totally different take on our interpretations and understandings of what these emerging and contemporary security issues are. We want to focus on man-made diseases, on cybercrime. We all have some experiences around that. On transnational criminal groups and the challenges that they pose to states. On more mundane things, on chieftaincy crisis, on land issues. And on land issues, a fascinating development in this country that challenges our conceptions and understandings around those who provide security, land guards. But I want to talk about private security companies and their relationship to the state. But even more importantly, we want to talk about pandemics. That will be the first part of our conversation with these two experts to my left. And then we'll take on the more critical part, our levels of preparedness. And we want to strip the rhetoric from the reality. How operationally prepared are we to respond to the challenges that we face around us? So, distinguished gentlemen, you are most welcome to this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
So let me start with you, Mr. Emmanuel Benson. ECOWAS and the challenges posed to the sub-region by contemporary and emerging security issues, the few topics that I have mentioned. What is ECOWAS doing? First, what is ECOWAS's understanding of these changing security environments?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks for being here. Let me just say that I know that you could answer this question within 5 minutes. Sadly, you're not the one. You're not the one who's answering. In my view, let me put it this way. I think when we look at what ECOWAS is, I think ECOWAS, first of all, could have handled, if we take the whole issue of what's happening with the Ebola crisis, for example. I want to start with that one because I think if we were to do a little comparative analysis of what the African Union is doing and ECOWAS is doing at the moment, I'd like to say, I think the other day I was telling a friend that the AU, no matter how toothless people may perceive it to be, at least I think it's taken some kind of leadership on this as far as Ebola is concerned. Sending a mission, they've just recently appointed a team, a mission to send to the Mano River Union countries that have been affected by Ebola and so on. But we are still, ECOWAS is still left found wanting on, this whole Ebola development fund that it talked about. That was agreed at the summit in July. And I'm not quite sure what's happening with it. Although Nigeria pledged, I believe, $1 million or something, we are yet to see anything. I would have thought that in the light of our health structures being in crisis already, this would have offered an opportunity for ECOWAS to say, look, let's look at how our internally generated funds that we make from our ECOWAS level, we can, instead of apportioning so much to X number of agencies, let's prioritize West Africa Health Organization. Let's look at how we can empower that agency, for example. Because I honestly feel that we do not need the US government to come in and say that, look, we have a Center of Disease Control, and therefore we are going to show leadership by, looking at how the structures can be set up for the AU by 2015 or 2016. The AU should have already, ECOWAS should already have taken leadership on this.
ECOWAS has shown some leadership in terms of
Yes.
the health ministers have met. There's been a heads of states meeting.
One meeting.
There's been a CDS meeting.
Another
with
meeting.
the defense chiefs. I think there's been about 3 or 4 meetings. Are you trying to tell me that all these meetings haven't brought anything at all to the table?
It's not about these meetings not having brought anything, but if we even look at the last meeting that was held, I think they pretty much reiterated what the World Health Organization had said. They just lent to create the sense that we shouldn't, airlines should not be restricted into Ebola-struck countries, and what else? There were some generic agreements that they came up with, all of which the World Health Organization has already, said. So I'm not quite sure what they have. We were looking for, some of us were looking to see something more concrete. Maybe, as the AU has done, that we are sending, let's say, ECOWAS volunteers, or ECOWAS mission, or a mission from the West Africa Health Organization to the Ebola-stricken countries, to help the AU, some kind of...
Now, this is very strange because, I mean, in terms of AU-ECOWAS relationship, I mean, ECOWAS has always shown leadership. So what is happening? You are the analyst. What is happening within ECOWAS?
What is happening?
Not for the first time, probably.
Well, okay, let me put this. I think ECOWAS has been taken by surprise. I was speaking to a health expert 3 weeks ago, and who's an executive director of one of the health NGOs here in Accra, and he was saying that, for example, that they had been doing preparations on malaria and all these other things, but not on Ebola, because Ebola is a disease that is considered a neglected tropical disease. So even for them that have taken leadership on malaria, they've been taken by surprise on Ebola. So with that statement, I left that meeting, thinking, if this is a health expert talking like this, I can't for the life of me expect ECOWAS policymakers to have anticipated.
Right. You are still watching Aning's Stake on emerging and contemporary security issues. Now, Ebenezer, when Emmanuel was speaking, you were nodding vigorously. And I'm saying, if you read the Common African Defense and Security Policy, African Union, backed by its regional economic communities, had identified pandemics as one of the potential threats to this continent. How come we've been taken flat-footed?
Yes, like I said, this is a clear example or manifestation of having a beautiful strategic plan and letting it accumulate dust on a shelf. You see, Africa is not short of good brains. Africa is not short of good plans. The challenge is in the execution of these plans. This is a cue to activity. Things should have been anticipated and preparations should have been done under quiet where there was no emergency. Now, they've had experience in military intervention, so that is it. But you see, you have to change your missions and strategies to meet emerging threats. They were caught flat-footed. All those in charge of strategic thinking and planning in West Africa are now ashamed. In fact...
Are they?
They are. They should be. They should be, because they are in positions. They have to execute. If you're a CEO of a company, if you're a general manager of a company, you have a strategic plan. It doesn't behove on the small guy downstairs to see to the execution of strategy. It is the senior guys. Where are they?
But to what extent are those who ought to have executed this strategy beholding to ordinary West Africans?
Well, that is the issue. That is the issue. Are they master servants or servant masters? We have this thing repeating itself over and over and over again. Are we even going to find out what happened? No. No, we are not even going to find out what happened. Individual states were left to I don't know, struggle with no expertise, nothing. Whereas we had ECOWAS. There is an ECOWAS chairman, there's an ECOWAS secretariat. This thing needs a strategic plan. It needs central command. It needs control. Somebody should take control of it and start giving directions. Now, Guinea is doing his, Liberia is doing his, what do you call it, Sierra Leone is doing. There's dissipation of effort.
So where should that direction ought to have come from? Should it have come from Abuja? That is where the locus of ECOWAS's activities reside? Or it ought to have come from the rotating or revolving chairmanship? Please, Emmanuel.
I'd like to think it probably should have come from Abuja, because I cannot for the life of me believe that our incumbent ECOWAS chair, would have been compelled to deal with that responsibility. This is something that ECOWAS, the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Ouedraogo, should have taken charge of. And for me, this highlights probably the Francophone and the Anglophone issues or split that is within ECOWAS. I think because here is also the fact that the West Africa Health Organization, I was thinking the other day that maybe if WAHO had been in an Anglophone speaking country, they may probably have taken a little bit more leadership than where it is now. I believe right now it's in Burkina Faso. WAHO is in Burkina Faso. It's under-resourced, it's underfunded. Even the website is, poorly updated. It's very cluttered. All these things. These are the times when crisis communicators would have said, okay, let's seize the opportunity to do something. I mean, I think ECOWAS took leadership, I must say, about a month ago when it set up an Ebola page. When you go to the main website, you see that there's a small alert there, and you go and it tells you all that. And it was given updates on what, or what was happening, on Ebola, the number of deaths, that kind of thing. And for me, that was a good thing. But I would have thought that those who are at the West Africa Health Organization then would have gotten a directive from the Commission President to say, look, let's seize the opportunity now to really make sure that you are helping member states on what we need to do about this crisis. Meetings, we know ECOWAS has been holding meetings for the longest time, and they are great, but we need to move beyond that and seize the opportunity. If the AU has been able to seize the opportunity, why can't? I mean, I was looking even at the AU health strategy. I believe they had a health strategy 2007 to 2015, in which it stipulates, it makes reference to the Abuja mandates, at least the Abuja targets of 2001, 15% towards health.
ECOWAS has been talking about ECOWAS of the people.
Yes.
Okay, so how do we use this crisis and the apparent failure to say that we should have a certain reconciliation of the grand institutional vision with the vision and interventions and engagement of ordinary West Africans? How do we do that, Ebenezer?
Well, I think they should engage more with the people, their constituents. We are their customers. They should engage more with the individual states. They should engage more with the population. They should engage more with the institutions.
How about an inverse relationship in which we say we want an ECOWAS that responds to our needs? So, Abuja, these are our demands. How do ordinary people, enlightened people like the people in this room, engage with ECOWAS? Because we know that elite bureaucratic politics is such that those at the very top may not necessarily take the move if they are not pushed. How do we ensure that there's a general stakeholder buy-in from ordinary people like us?
Yes. Again, it comes down to how seriously we take our individual jobs. People are in these offices. What do they do on a day-to-day basis when they go to these offices? Are they living up to their billing? Because you have to, if nothing at all, if they are not coming, like you said, we should engage with them. There is an officer somewhere, health institutions somewhere, whatever it is. The countries are their constituents. How did they respond? How did they ask for help? How did they individually decide that, look, if I am the health representative, where is the plan? Where do I plug in? What are the strategic objectives that I have? What plans do I put in place to start getting some of these things done in preparation of in case? We have people, we are not actually demanding the public, also the people too. We really don't demand from those in authority
and if
performance.
And if I may also add, I would even like to think that here is the time where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs probably should have taken charge a little bit more. Because we have an ECOWAS national unit in each of the member states, and we have one here in Ghana, maybe understaffed, I think 2 or 3 people, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But then the ECOWAS national unit did not come out of the air. It was set up as a result of many meetings at the ECOWAS level, in which they decided let's have a representative of ECOWAS at the national level. Number one, how many people even know about the ECOWAS national unit? Because, ideally, I would like to see it, replicated in the way that, let's say, the EU has an EU mission. The ECOWAS national unit ideally should have been, an ECOWAS mission. In the same way that we have a West African Monetary Institute here, we have another Herrera here, and so on. It should have been an ECOWAS mission, so that is the place where people can get information about ECOWAS, and therefore, at this time, ECOWAS would have said, look, we are sending money to the ECOWAS national unit, leaflets, thousands of leaflets about how to respond to and people can go and pick it up from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the ECOWAS national unit.
ECOWAS has more than enough money.
Yes.
I mean, in several ways, ECOWAS has demonstrated a certain proactiveness in terms of this 1% export tax that goes into the kitty.
Yes.
But probably we should move on a little bit, because it's not just Ebola that confronts us.
Of course.
Ebola is the newest kid on the block. Probably is mutating or beginning to mutate or might mutate. But we have cybercrime.
Yes.
We know the 419ers. We know the chieftaincy issues. We know narcotics. We know human trafficking. It looks to me as if this sub-region is under some massive concerted attack by the bad guys. Piracy is on the rise. I mean, Ebenezer was telling me prior to this show that piracy seems to be on the rise. We are much worse off than the Gulf of Aden.
Yeah.
Ebenezer, how did we get to this?
Well, we are not coordinating policies, full stop. The protocols are there, but everybody is following his own agenda. Let's take piracy, for instance. I don't know the protocols between Ghana and Lome and Benin and all these things, but we have a situation where we have a standing navy, equipped, trained, and everything. All they need is maybe money to make sure that their vessels are seaworthy and can do the job. It's not now you are taking them to school. What do? We go ahead and create the police marine or marine police or something with 6 boats. And now you have to train people, produce a new command, and then within 6 months or 9 months, 4 of the 6 boats are grounded because they can't even handle them well and they are out of commission. The 2 are also in mothballs.
But is it not possible that because of the prosecutorial side, that the police are trained to gather evidence and to present that evidence in court? That is why probably the establishment of that marine police came about.
Well, whatever the thinking behind it, couldn't they have co-opted that thing into the standing unit? Well, there's the military police. In the army, we have the military police. And they are given special police training. And I guess there's an extent to which they can do the initial police duties until they hand it over to the civil police. I think something could have been worked out better in that direction. You go to Nigeria, you see they've got these big marine boats there. But crime is going on, and they see even dead bodies floating on the water, and they don't even pick them. You have to tell them. I mean, it's disjointed and disconnected. No, what do you call it?
No cohesion and no strategy.
And no strategy. No, I haven't seen a West African exercise, say like the NATO does or someone does. No, so West African exercise on piracy, where we got a simulation.
We will leave it there. But as we lament, I think we should be thinking about what are the strategic interventions that we need to put in place. Okay? But let's talk about cybercrime. Because I think that is something that we are all beginning to face. It's becoming a mega challenge. Ghana is the 4th most cybercrime-ridden country in the world, worse than Pakistan and Afghanistan. We can't use our credit. We can't shop online. We all know that. How has this come about, and how do we respond to it? Emmanuel.
How has it come about? Well, we don't want to blame any, do any finger pointing to our neighbors, but we know that we've had the whole, we've had the whole issue of some of our West African neighbors coming in under the guise of being Ghanaians and, you know, committing these kind of, you know, so-called 419, you know, stealing credit cards, you know, assuming, you know, personalities that they are not so that they can rob people. And sadly, a lot of the, you know, foreigners who have succumbed to this kind of problem, you know, have gone away feeling that, oh, yes, well, it's Ghanaians are not to be trusted, or this particular group of people are not to be trusted. So all that has not helped. I'll
challenge you on that.
Yeah.
Let's take a little bit of a commercial break.
Okay.
And I think when we come back, we would interrogate this conception of Ghanaians as necessarily good and hospitable.
Yes.
I think the statistics do not necessarily support the argument. We will go for a commercial break
Okay.
now. Welcome back. This is Aning Stake, and my guests today are Captain Ebenezer Budu Kumsin, Security Consultant, and Emmanuel Benson, ECOWAS Policy Analyst. Emmanuel, just before we went on break,
Yes.
you were making allusions to the fact that people have come into the country and have, in a certain sense, abused our hospitality and openness and used our identity and opportunities for crime.
Yeah.
But the police statistics don't bear that out.
Okay.
I mean, if you look at the police statistics over the last 15 years, less than 3 to 5% of all categories of crimes in this country are committed by foreigners.
Less than 3%.
Yeah, less than 3%. If you look at our prisons, from Ankafo maximum security prisons to Nsawam to wherever, less than 3 to 5% of the inmates are foreigners. So there must be something wrong with the perception and the reality.
Yeah.
Ebenezer, please.
Yes, Doc, I will also agree with what you are saying, because some time ago in Accra, we were blaming foreigners for all the armed robberies. The regional police commander at that time decided to disprove it. And out of 10 armed robbers that were caught, only 2 were foreigners. So I was a refugee before, so he's blame the foreigner. Blame the foreigner, and then you get comfortable, but it's not true. The issue is that I think it's a sign of state weakness. When the state is weak, it cannot exert absolute control over all its territory. And the institutions are also weak. Weakness in the security services, the police, the security. So when there's that weakness, the criminals flow in. They take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And when they take advantage of it and come in, we are very good at learning, copying people. So they teach us, and we now become even better students than the teachers. I was amazed to hear that, I think I said Swedru or somewhere was the capital of cyber. I said, what? Swedru? Well, fine. Because the Ghanaian never ceases to amaze you. You understand?
No, but why are you amazed that my town was the capital of, or is the capital of cybercrime? No, but I think it needs that you make a very good point. I think we need to distinguish between Sakawa and cybercrime.
Yes.
Occasionally, we seem to conflate the two.
Yeah.
Sakawa is cyber spirituality or techno spirituality, but cybercrime is solid, you know, techno criminality. But Emmanuel, to come back, I mean, if you look at the trifecta of the rhetoric that underpins and people use to explain why cybercrime. I mean, if you talk to the Ghanaian young people, they will tell you things like, look, but people have come here, colonized us, stolen our money, multinational companies, it's our legitimate right to try to steal some of the money back. But look at me. I'm getting poorer and poorer by the day, and others are getting richer and richer. What stops me from trying to take a little bit from them? And then the third thing is that, hey, guys, I've also got a right to have a good life. Okay? So there's this justificatory rhetoric, at least among the Ghanaian cyber criminals. That says, look, we don't have any problem doing this business at all. Now, when people have this kind of attitude, how do we respond to it? A legitimizing narrative that says that this crime is necessary. And also, more disturbingly, that society seems to accept the spin-offs of these criminal activities. How do we deal with that, Emmanuel?
As Captain was saying, it's the state. The state has to play has to be a little bit more proactive. It has to go beyond setting up antivirus and all these things in internet cafes and actually link up with, for example, I know for a fact that one ECOWAS agency, GIABA, the Intergovernmental Action Group in Dakar, has been holding a number of meetings, setting up protocols and ways in which, cybercrime and all these
money laundering, terrorist financing.
Yes. But we were having a conversation with one of the staff the other day, and it looks like the results of their meetings are not really felt at the national level, and that's one challenge that they have, because they are linking up with the UN, holding regular workshops on specific articles that speak to these issues. But then how does it translate to the national level? I think it's a question of also capacity building. Because if you even look at the case of what is happening with transnational crime, drug trafficking, and so on, the fact that we have something like what they call transnational crime units, that have been set up by the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, that have linkages with even the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center, and a whole host of international institutions, including ECOWAS and GIABA and so on, which are building capacity of jurists and all these people.
What kind of capacity are we building?
Yes.
Because you see, capacity building has become an industry in itself.
Yes.
And if you look at Africa's capacities in 1950s, between 1950 and 1960, African states had more capacity than we have now. So I'm asking you, as an ECOWAS policy analyst, what types of capacities are lacking, and what types of capacities are we trying to provide? Because I think there's a certain lacuna there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Implementation of these security agencies who are even supposed to police these things. And I'm saying that if they are wrongly oriented, they will be getting the wrong capacities. And even when they've gotten the capacities, they will not be using it to the benefit of the people. Let's take an example. Recently, when Boko Haram struck in Nigeria, we heard about how the military reacted, to the extent they said that we are not trained to fight jungle warfare or guerrilla warfare. And look at that, West Africa, it's jungle all over the place. To the extent that they were even afraid, it's alleged, to engage. How are our security agencies and resources in even our country oriented? There seems to be a bias towards regime protection.
Are you telling me?
So that the resources are not being applied.
So are you telling me that the doctrine, that the doctrine that we are using to train the military is still for regime protection and not?
We may have to have a look at it, whether it has been revised and aligned critically to emerging threats. I'm saying that it showed up in Nigeria. I don't know how it has been addressed in Ghana, but it has shown up that we are not aligned to modern trends. Ebola hit, and everybody was running around like a headless chicken until...
But headless chicken in soup is not bad.
Well, you understand? The central agency should have taken command and should have even told us what to do. Everybody was left to go and find out information, so that the local Ministry of Health was the one receiving all the heat, and they themselves said we needed even specialist training.
So basically, the argument that you are making
and
is that we don't seem to be up to speed in terms of first understanding the changed security environment within which we are.
The environment
and then preparing ourselves and capacitating ourselves to be able to respond to that changed environment.
And couple that with bad attitude.
Earlier on, you used the word bad governance, or the word bad governance.
Bad attitude.
What do you mean by bad attitude?
Did I get into that office with an aim to do something, to improve something? I get into an office, and this is the situation I met it. Am I leaving having improved or done something to improve the situation I inherited? Or me too, I'm just inside, taking my salary. Ghana Airways directors are now doing traffic control lessons in London. I mean, what the heck? You see, we get into the office to take what we can take. So nobody really holds senior people for performance targets and accountability.
But how many of our top people have performance contracts? Emmanuel.
Yes.
Now, when people don't have performance contracts
Yes.
and they don't deliver,
Yes.
how do ordinary citizens then respond?
Ordinary citizens can only respond. These days, we know it's through social media, which is not the best way. And
But I don't do social media.
way.
I don't know how to Twitter. I don't do Facebook. I
Yes.
don't do that
Yes.
thing with the bird that flutters.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
No.
My most sophisticated social media is WhatsApp, which I sometimes I get totally confused.
Yeah.
But they respond.
Occupy
They
Flagstaff
respond
House.
by now going on it can lead to rebellion, by going on demonstrations.
Yeah.
But, also because it's a sign of desperation. Because if you go to the courts, you don't have the staying power, be it time, the legal mind, or the resources to go through it. You get postponed and
So you
postponed
opt
and
out.
postponed.
Yeah,
So you opt out.
So you opt out.
Yeah, you opt
Excellent.
out because you know there's absolutely
Then,
nothing.
then you are not forced into demonstrations and rebellion or things that will. I mean,
So-
when the roads were so bad in Ashama, when they threatened to burn the bridge, overnight, when there had not been money for years, they found money to start doing something about it.
So let's talk about this opting out as a potential threat to state stability.
Precisely.
And I think, Ebenezer, when we were talking earlier on before the show, you and I discussed the way in which part of that opting out is looking at alternative sources of security provision. And you mentioned land guards. Okay? That when the state is unable to provide security and to deliver security in ways that ordinary people find acceptable, that they look for alternatives. And one of the ways of opting out is the land guards that you may mention.
Yes, but then you see the issue of the land guards could also be a function of the security services looking the other way, not having the appetite to control it when it happens. Look,
Now,
recently, a very bad land guard incident happened towards Pokwasi or somewhere there, when even someone was shot. What? Suddenly, the police knew who was the ringleader and who has been financing them, and they couldn't find him. But the guy had been terrorizing that community for years.
Now, this is controversial, but I think it's necessary for us to place a handle on this. Land guardism is a near criminal activity.
Yeah.
But why do people go to land guards to protect their property? If we didn't use land guards and we didn't find them useful in responding to some of our needs, they wouldn't be in existence. So this raises critical questions.
One of the reasons why people go into land guards can be explained through an analogy. With all that is happening with lights going off, and now we've been threatened that we'll get more lights off because West Africa, Nigeria has cut off gas and so on. What happens is that people opt for generators. So you see the situation whereby people opt for, private solutions to, to public problems. So instead of complaining to ECG for the longest time that, what is happening with the lights and why we're not getting, they decide to buy a generator. It's an expensive alternative, but that is the way in which they can get power. Same can be said with land guards. We don't feel comfortable that the state or the police can protect us adequately to look after our land. Therefore, we'll opt for the private solution, which is land
So
guards.
public schools are not good. My
So we'll
kid
take
cannot go
private.
to fancy school, so I go to private school.
Yes.
The public hospitals are not good,
So I'll
so I
go
go
to
to private.
private.
But we know that our salaries cannot pay for all these things. So that creates another big problem.
So they
But
find
probably
it.
we shouldn't talk salaries now. But there are two sort of ancillary issues that are related to what we are talking about, cybercrime, pandemics, the distance from the state. We will take our last break. But then when we come back, I want us to discuss the impact of narcotics on our society. And in a much wider sense. Because we saw the way that Mr. Martin got back into town and the almost celebratory mood at the airport. And it has implications in terms of the signal that it sends and the way that it impacts on society's perceptions on the acceptability or otherwise of narcotics trafficking. So we will take our break, come back, and I think we will try to discuss this issue. So we will take our break, and I think we will discuss.
Every Saturday, I demand on your behalf the bare facts behind the major issues that dominated the news in Ghana in the week. The biggest drivers of the news show up here because they know discerning people home and abroad choose Newsfile.
One could almost see some political interference in that work.
Even in mediocrity, they are last. Your facts are not necessarily always correct.
The NDC has made phenomenal investments in educational infrastructure.
We believe we have a good case, so it doesn't really matter before we appear.
We have had worse cases of criticism, and I'm not going to cite them now unless I'm provoked.
Newsfile is incontrovertibly the most intellectual and your most authoritative news analysis platform on TV, on radio, and online. Digging and dissecting all the topical issues, shaking up all the parties, shaping the national discourse to drive real national development. Newsfile, every Saturday, 9 a.m. on TV, radio, and online. Newsfile is proudly brought to you in association with
Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner.
Star Assurance, your solid partner.
So fresh and powerful.
Wemplex 400, your one-stop dewormer for common worms.
MTN, everywhere you go.
Welcome back from the break. This is Aning's take on emerging and contemporary security issues. My guests are Captain Ebenezer Budukumsin, security consultant, and Emmanuel Bensa, ECOWAS policy analyst. Before we went on break, we wanted to tie in all these emerging security issues with a discussion on narcotics. We know that the whole West African sub-region is under immense threat. Ghana has not been spared, and it has affected quite a number of our both public and private institutions and perceptions. How does this fit into the conversation that we are having? What role does drugs play? What is the size of the drugs trade? And how is it impacting on this country?
Doc, it's the narcotics threat, I think, is the biggest threat that should cause us sleepless nights. Ebola is something that will come and kill as many of us and then maybe take a break and come back another time. No matter
it's mutating.
Yeah. But then narcotics is said to be $1 trillion business. Yeah. And the barons, the criminals, have noted that West Africa here is weak structurally. The states are weak, weakened by their own corrupt practices, weakened by their own bad attitude governance practices, weakened by their own weak structures. So therefore, they found a gap here. Now, when they come in to do whatever their transit or doing it here themselves, they can actually destroy the fabric of the society. Because if they really want to make this point a point of transit and business, taking $1 billion out of $1 trillion industry to come and subvert our institutions, I mean, it's the easiest thing for them to do. We pray to God that they don't do that. But can you imagine when some of our state officials, be it legal, be it the police, be it the civil servants, sees $1,000, $1,000, the amount of compromises he can make, and then they come in here with $1 million, $200 million. I mean, I don't know. I get scared that they can buy almost anything. They can compromise almost anybody.
Emmanuel.
Yeah.
Every single West African state is under threat.
Yes.
In Senegal, the deputy chief of the Narcotics Control Board has just been arrested. In the Gambia, the deputy IGP was arrested.
Look at that.
In Sierra Leone, the Minister of Communications brought in 600 kilos, private jets, painted in Red Cross colors, with his brother, the head of the Sierra Leonean Football Association. In Nigeria, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee was arrested. In Ghana, we just had this MP come back and his supporters from his home constituency in party colors, meeting him at the airport. In Togo, the Peruvians, the Colombians, and the Bolivians are there, negotiating about the quality and the price. What is ECOWAS doing?
I know, I know that ECOWAS is trying to do something.
Is doing or trying to?
Let me put this: it's trying to do something. First
Which means
of all,
that it has not done anything.
It has not done anything concrete that will respond to the narcotics menace. I say trying to do because I know that with one agency that I referred to earlier, GIABA, and I read a report of theirs a while back, in which they clearly outlined the causes, the consequences of the drug menace. One of which was the fact that you had a lot of foreigners. Our free movement allows a lot of, people to move in and out, as we well know. That includes also people like the Lebanese, who happen to have, nationalized, and there are a lot of them in Côte d'Ivoire, all over the sub-region, who also are playing instrumental roles in this drug menace. We see it with manifested in Mali, with Mujao, with all the criminal groups that are there. There are a lot of foreigners that are involved in that. It's not just about Africans who are hungry, who came from Libya and who want to carry guns. There are foreigners who have nationalized, who take advantage of this opportunity at porous borders.
Yes, but you see,
and to take the argument further, beyond the reports that GIABA has written, so those are there. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime has also written reports and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is that I see that there's a little sense, what ECOWAS has done is encouraging with the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, the transnational crime units I talked about earlier, having a member of the judiciary, a member of also the narcotics agency, and there's one other, it slips my mind at the moment, but a transnational crime unit in which that can respond, that has been set up in some ECOWAS member states to be able to respond to drug trafficking. But it's not enough. It's once again, it's about building capacity. And for me, the biggest, a word that you use, lacuna, for me is, I look around in Ghana, I see that there are a number of agencies that have been transformed into authorities. Food and Drugs Board is now Food and Drugs Authority, etc., and all these things. But NACOB is still a National Narcotics Control Board. Why not a Narcotics Control Agency or Authority, so that it'll have the authority to be able to raise finances on its own and to work with institutions like GIABA, other ECOWAS agencies, and the UN to actually counter crime in a way that Nigerians are able to also do with the EFCC and so on.
I think you are suggesting the answer. It goes to the will and the attitude. Why don't we upgrade it and give it teeth to bite?
Upgrade it for what? When we love the money that comes from the business.
You see, and it goes with this saying. You say, what you tolerate, you perpetuate.
Yeah, but irrespective of whether we tolerate or perpetrate, we love the money that comes from, the criminal proceeds.
Yes.
We love.
Yes.
Okay, and we know that nobody's going to hand in a narcotics drug log in this country because they are the state. They provide what the state has failed to provide. Schools, jobs, housing, school fees, all the works.
Unemployment.
Okay, now, Ebenezer, you use the word to subvert. Nobody can subvert you if you are not ready to be subverted.
Yes. But then, you see, panic, need, and these things can make you susceptible to these things. Look at the hordes of graduate unemployed people we are putting on the streets every day.
But are we training them enough to be able to be employed? Is the quality of education good enough for these guys to be given a job?
There's something wrong with it. But you see, when I see the number of professors and doctors and God knows what we have around, and we are refuting. Oh, but me, I know every professor is professor. So every doctor is a doctor. So we are refusing as a people, it's attitude, we are refusing to address our minds to the problems. And the other day I was on a program, I said, we are refusing to think. We have genuine problems. We are watching the problems. We are reporting the problems. Where are the solutions? Concrete. concrete thoughts.
But maybe
that
people
will bring
don't want the
solutions.
solutions because when there are problems and there are weaknesses, they can profit and benefit.
Attitude.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Goes back to attitude. Bad attitude, bad governance. We want to have the confused system at the port so that the people can profit
benefit.
from it.
Yeah.
We don't want to simplify any system in Ghana. You want to buy a piece of land, we have to make it as complicated and difficult for you as possible so that even the messenger can take something from you.
But aren't we the gateway to West Africa?
Oh, yeah.
And Nigeria is the destination.
No, I like that. I think a little bit of humor in this.
And
brother.
we suddenly became middle class. I don't know whether bottom, middle, or high. But hey.
But let's find some solutions so that people don't choke on their dinner tonight
Right.
when they watch us. What can be done about all this? I don't think it's all that negative. I mean, the two of you are here. You are demonstrating an intense knowledge, a depth of knowledge and nuance. And I'm sure you have some ideas, truly. Emmanuel.
The way forward on all this, that's a big one. No, but seriously, speaking from the perspective of someone who's been monitoring ECOWAS for a while, I think we should stop the bailouts, first of all. There are internally generated solutions that we have within the sub-region that we can use. And if, I also think that the media has an important role to play. I don't think that the media buys enough into what ECOWAS can do, you see. And as such, we don't get enough conversation about these kind of things in the media for them to be able to, to say, okay, let's have specialized people, looking at ECOWAS in the same way that people are looking at sanitation and hygiene and looking at transport and so on, to be able to be tracking. Because it's all well and good to bring people like us who may talk plenty. But it's also good to have people who are regularly writing and reporting. In the media, so Graphic, for example, that every day you see cowed news from Africa. What stops Graphic from having dedicated reporters monitoring ECOWAS and AU affairs and writing about them?
So probably we need to channel this to GIJ.
Yeah.
Okay, bringing out journalists who are subject matter experts and then media houses employing those. Please.
I would suggest first and foremost strengthening governance. We have to illuminate governance. We have to expose things. We have to build capacity in governance. Now, when there's efficiency, accountability, transparency, and these things, it will address some of these things to an extent. In order pecking, I will say that the next is the security agencies. We have to strengthen their capacity, reorient them to make sure they are aligned with the new threats, not stuck in their old ways and get caught again. He mentioned the press. I say that public awareness and education. We are not getting enough information. If you look at CNN, there's a Dr. Gupta something. He reports, he's a doctor, he's a press guy, he reports on medicine and emerging things. Some of them are football specialists, some of them, they are specialists. They report on these issues. Here, like you said, where are the specialist areas? Where are areas of interest? Our areas of interest are on the sensational things. Jidda, Fida, this man has chopped this, and so therefore we wallow. We wallow. We are not serious. There should also be collaboration between the security agencies, the public, the private diplomatic, all these. There should be trust even in the police. When I have an armed robber, a drug leader, living in my neighborhood, most probably I know him. I don't trust the police to the extent that if I should go and blow the whistle, the perception is that tomorrow the armed robber will come and
Emmanuel, how do we build trust? How do we build trust in a society in which there's a huge gap and a growing gap between those who govern and those who are governed, an unwillingness to align and to meet in the middle for the common good? How do we build this trust?
I believe it starts with accountability, and it has to start from our DCEs all the way up, from our assemblymen all the way up to the top. As you said, it is found wanting at the moment. I'm not quite sure how we're going to get there, because I think we are going to continue to find a lot of people opting out or opting for private solutions until they feel that the public institutions, are helping them. Yes, you do hear good stories, good news stories of people in public institutions working hard, but it's not enough. There's too much of the obvious, and therefore people, we're going to have more of the same for quite a while.
I think that this is the first time we've used the word institutions in this conversation. Yeah. And I remember when Obama came here, he said what Africa needs are not strong men, but strong institutions. How do we build these institutions? How do we get them to be responsive to the needs of ordinary people?
Well, it comes back to capacity building, spending the money right. We have budgets on training and these things, but you will see that the boss man who is like 6 months retirement is the one going. Accountability, transparency. We have to build the capacity.
We just have a minute more, so 30 seconds.
Okay.
An optimistic, hopeful message for the future.
All is not lost. All is not lost at all, but let's really put more pressure on, in my view, on our media men to be able to
and women
look men and women to look at issues like these. I want to say thank you actually for having a show like this in which we are able to actually make some of these views known, because it's a start of better things to come. We need more public education on these things.
Right. I would say that giving up on ourselves is not an option. It's not on the cards at all. We have to get out of our lethargy. We accept everything thrown at us, and we moan, and we have our individual monies and comfort zones, so I will stay and protect. We have to get activists. We have to start engaging those who are in authority, and we have to start demanding answers, and we have to push for excellence. We have to push for competence. We have to push for accountability. We can't, if we keep quiet, these things will continue, and we don't like it. So we've got to do something about the situation.
And I like the word you've used. We've got to push for excellence. I think mediocrity has become the name of the game, and I think we've got to move away from that. We can, amongst ourselves, deliver and deliver as optimally as possible. Okay, I want to thank my guests profoundly for a very fascinating conversation this evening. To my immediate left, Captain Ebenezer Budukumsin, security consultant. After him, Emmanuel Bensa, ECOWAS policy analyst. Thank you so much for a very fascinating evening.
Thank you.
And for a very fascinating conversation.
Thank you once again.